7:01. So let's call the meeting to order. Before we get started, let's introduce everyone on this meeting. I'm Travis Mast, filling in for Sandy. When I call your name, please confirm you can hear by verifying you are present. So starting with the commissioners, Patrick.
Here, I can hear you.
And Emily.
Here, I can hear you too. Thank you.
And then speakers for Fisherville Pond transmission line. Gregory, if you could just unmute, test out the audio.
Sure. I'm here. I'm not the primary speaker. Olivia Shaw is. I'm
Okay.
just sort of here to back her up. I don't see her name on the list, but
Jan, are there any other speakers? Gregory's the only one I'm seeing.
I don't see anyone else on.
Okay. This open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely via Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order. As most recently extended on March 29th, 2023, access info for the public has been provided on the town website. This meeting is being recorded. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. If you are using the dial in by telephone feature, you can mute yourself by pressing *6. As acting chair, I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please note that you will not have screen share privileges, but Jan or Leah can help display any visuals per your cue. After speakers conclude the remarks, I'll invite each commissioner to provide comments, questions, or motions. After the commissioners have spoken, I'll allow public comments to be spoken by participants. Participants, please use the raise hand feature by clicking on the hand icon at the bottom right of the Zoom menu to indicate you'd like to speak. If you are using dial in by telephone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute when you are called on. Participants who raise their hand will be recognized one at a time and will be promoted to speak. Public comments will be followed by commission and applicant responses. Finally, each vote taken will be conducted by roll call vote. As a reminder, the commission is concerned with state and town wetlands and stormwater regulations. Concerns outside of this purview need to be addressed to the appropriate boards. For example, road conditions must be addressed with the select board, traffic concerns with the planning board. So, Leah, do you want to do any action items? Meeting minutes? Unless you think Creeper Hill Road will be quick.
I think would need more time for them, but if you want to do the meeting minutes and also the Abbey Woods, that's
Abbey
continuing
Woods.
anyway.
All right, so February 6th, 2024 meeting minutes. I looked through them. I didn't have any questions or comments. It looked good. Emily, Patrick, do you have a chance to look at those?
No questions. They look good.
Yeah, no comments. Looks good.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the February 6th meeting minutes?
Motion to approve February 6th meeting minutes.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Roll call vote. Emily,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries. Leah, do I need to read in Abbey Woods?
Yep.
All right. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, and Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Grafton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing via Zoom to act upon a notice of intent application for stormwater bylaw permit and for Grafton Wetlands bylaw permit for the construction of a barn and driveway. That's not right. For the construction of housing development at 18 Carroll Road.
Yep.
In Grafton. You guys did that on purpose. The application materials, meeting link, and access info will be posted to the Grafton website. It is posted to the Grafton website. So is there anyone here from
Nope,
the
they just
applicant?
want to continue to March 12.
Okay. So do I have a motion to continue the hearing to March 12th?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
roll call vote, Patrick,
Yes.
Emily,
yes.
I am also a yes. Motion carries. So 116 Creeper Hill will take a while.
I mean,
One-
we could start it if you wanted. Got like
And
10
then
minutes.
116 Upton Street.
Yeah, I don't
That one will probably
think
take a
they're on
while.
yet. I don't see them online yet. The only other thing I had in the meantime is just that last meeting we did our like quarterly updates from anyone who's a rep to another committee. So I know Patrick, you weren't here. So just if you had anything to report in on open space and rec.
No, I don't. They've been meeting. I haven't been able to make the last couple. I've had conflicts with school stuff and sicknesses, so nothing to report from me.
Okay.
Was someone from the applicant gonna come for 116 Creeper Hill?
Yeah, they're in attendees. We can promote them if is that what you want to do next?
That or we wait 5 minutes?
We can start on them and then if we gotta finish up afterwards, we could do that.
All right, let's do that. So you want to promote them to speaker, Jan?
Yes, that'll be Chris.
So Chris, you have the floor for 116 Creeper Hill.
Hi, folks. How's it going? My name is Chris Frattaroli. I'm a wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting. We're here tonight talking about 116 Creeper Hill Road. This is a outstanding violation that essentially involved a bit of wetland fill at the edge of the access road. Thank you, Jan. This is just kind of an overview of the site. You can see 116 Creeper Hill Road is labeled on the south of the image. That's the actual site where the violation occurred. And then my client is Mr. Paulo Martins, who lives at 1 Sergeant's Island all the way to the north. And this road is the only access to his home. And this land is owned by New England Power Company, also known as National Grid. You'll see obviously the power lines going overhead there. So I think his intent with this work was really just to kind of improve road access there. But obviously needs to go through the appropriate channels. So Jan, if you don't mind scrolling down for me. Oh, and this one is just the USGS kind of oriented to the site. We can keep moving down. So this photo is from prior to the violation. This was provided to me by the client, and I've included this just to kind of give you an idea of what it looked like beforehand. So really, you can see it's just kind of the edge of that wetland there as it tapers up to that gravel access road. The right side of this photo is the area we're talking about. We can keep moving down, Jan, if you don't mind. This was from the day that we initially went out there and delineated the wetlands on the site. So you can see, obviously, that fill has been pushed off to the right side there. This is not the exact same location as that previous image, but it gives you an idea. The blue flagging you see is essentially what we called, the wetland line today. And the pink flagging represents about where we could approximate that historic wetland boundary was located. So I think the next is just another photo, similar one. Yeah, so you can see it's just really a bit of fill material pushed off to the side in order to expand that road, make access a little easier. Really, I think the primary concern was to make snow removal and storage easier. So as we go down to the next, this is essentially what we flagged out on the site. So you'll notice there's really 3 distinct areas of fill. That pink line is the pre-violation wetland line. So again, we went in there and took a bunch of soil samples and kind of established that as best we could. And then the blue line corresponds to those blue flags you saw in one of those previous pictures. And that's essentially where the wetland line stands now. So the difference between those being the fill areas. They total just about 1,600 square feet, again, in those three distinct areas. So what we've done is, and before I get ahead of myself, we can move down to the next one. Mr. Martins went out there kind of in a good faith effort, tried to rectify the problem, removed a bunch of that fill from the wetlands, kind of just scraped it back to the edge of the side of the road there. And obviously not restored to pre-existing conditions. I'd say it's, somewhere in the neighborhood of half or 75% removed. So this was actually what spurred the official enforcement order. Prior to that, it was just kind of a more of an informal violation discussion. So this is more or less what the site looks like today. I think the next one just shows a different angle there. So you can see most of the material has been pulled back, but again, not quite restored to pre-violation conditions. So what we've done is we put together a restoration plan. It's pretty straightforward because of kind of the limited scope of what we're looking at here. So it basically specifies, returning to those original wetland soils. I know that there's still visible under that kind of veneer of the remaining fill. So the idea is to scrape back the rest of that fill. I think it's going to be mostly handwork, shovels and rakes, and then kind of clean up the area, reaffirm those natural grades. We're fortunate that there is unimpacted wetland topography directly adjacent to this area. So that is going to be a really great sort of piece of guidance in reestablishing these grades and making sure we're back to the original topography. And then beyond that, it really just calls for seeding the area and revegetating in that way, because this is a roadside. It does get periodically mowed by National Grid, as is their right to maintain their easement here. So really, in a nutshell, that's what we're looking at. Be happy to take any questions and give you whatever answers I can.
We'll start with the commissioners. Emily, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Patrick,
When will the restoration take place?
So I mean, the fill removal can really happen at any time, ideally as soon as possible. I think the seeding probably makes sense to wait until the spring to make sure that we get, good weather for that to germinate and we don't really lose any of it on the tail end of the winter here. But where the intent is to get it going as quickly as possible after we get approval on this.
I don't really have any other questions at the moment.
so is all of the fill material being removed? Is that
So-
the plan? You're not going to leave anything behind, correct?
So the idea is to kind of leave a little bit of a berm there on the side of the road. We think that that's gonna, well, it reduces the amount of work involved. Kind of provides a little bit of a buffer between the road area and the wetland because it's directly adjacent. So the idea will be to kind of clean up that berm, grade it out to something that's a little bit more natural, get rid of some of that debris that you see in there, and then that'll get seeded with an appropriate roadside mix.
So it seems like the berm would serve as a diversion for water and then concentrate the flow. And if I recall, originally the applicant wanted to do this to have more space to plow snow. So I guess my thought is if there's something left, there's a good chance it's just going to get pushed back in during snow plowing, especially.
I mean, I think the thought was to kind of more so use it as a buffer. And I think that once it's revegetated, it'll be pretty stable. I can see that being a concern, but I don't think that in practicality it's going to work out that way. Although I may be wrong on that.
Yeah, but it will be outside of the wetland, correct? It'll be on,
Correct.
The
Yeah.
roadway?
So the idea is to just kind of keep scraping that back to the edge of those pink flagged stakes there and reestablish that grade, because it is maybe a foot or two drop between the edge of the road and the wetland grade there. So that kind of just serves to be that slope, essentially.
do you know the linear feet of that berm?
I don't offhand. I know that it's a couple 100 feet broken up into a couple of different sections. I don't have that number offhand though.
I guess if we have a condition that that berm will be seeded, stabilized, and part of the monitoring, and if it doesn't work, has to be vegetated.
Yeah.
Leah,
So
do you want to, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it is called out with a specific seed mix and everything in our restoration plan. So it will be vegetated.
Leah, do you want to go through your recommendations or jump to Fisherville?
I think we can probably finish this up pretty quick. What do you think?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
You want to go through your conditions?
Yeah, I just have a couple notes first. National Grid did confirm that they approved this plan, so it has been coordinated with them. One question I had was just whether the commission was okay with that berm being left in place, which it sounds like if we just add a condition about it, that's fine. The other question I had for the commission is, and maybe if Chris can just take us through this real quick. I know there's a little area that's within bordering land subject to flooding. If Jan goes up like a few pages, I think it's like shaded in light
Yep,
blue. Yeah.
exactly.
So if you could just talk us through impacts versus restoration and what your logic was on that, and then the commission can decide if they're in agreement.
Sure thing. So you see the area where it bumps out to the east between fill areas 1 and 2. There's a little bit of an upland mound there. And that mound is actually where all of the fill material came from. So you'll see, obviously, it was taken from an area that is within the floodplain, which is BLSF, and then spread outwards. So we have not completed flood storage calculations, but we do think that based on this mapping, at least, we've kind of ended up with actually less material within the floodplain, and that material has been spread out beyond the extent of the floodplain.
So as long as you guys are okay with that logic, that was the only other note I had, and then I have potential conditions.
Emily, any questions about the floodplain?
No questions, thank you.
Patrick, how about you?
No, I guess not. No questions.
So the fill that came from the upland is going back to the upland?
No, so really what's happened is that it's kind of been scraped to the side of the road there. So that material will essentially turn into that berm we were just talking about. If there is material that needs to be removed or exported off site, there's a couple stipulations in our plan about making sure those are legally disposed of off site. National Grid wanted to just have a quick sign off on where those were going to be placed and so forth. So it's not going to necessarily be returned to that area where it came from. It's going to primarily remain along the road or be exported off site.
Has any fill been taken off site?
I don't believe any material has moved outside of this area that you see in this graphic here, either in or out.
So the site was filled, but it's not going away. I guess I just don't understand where all the fill is going to be part of this berm.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's really not a great volume of fill.
Okay.
So that's why, to kind of temper costs on that front and expenditure and effort. That's kind of where this berm idea came from.
All right. Leah, do you want to go through your recommendations or conditions?
So I had 4, now I have 5 after our conversation. So the first would be all procedures laid out in the restoration plan shall be adhered to, especially those stated by National Grid. Second would be the roadside seed mix shall not be placed beyond the pink flagging of the original wetland boundary. Only wetland seed mix shall be placed behind those pink flags. Third, lays out the different time periods that we would want monitoring reports. So monitoring reports shall be submitted to the commission upon initial fill removal, establishment of new topography, establishment of the seeded areas, initial growth of the seeded areas, and final establishment of growth in the seeded areas. Fourth one from our conversation is that the berm will be seeded, stabilized, and part of those monitoring reports. And then the fifth one, I wanted to set rough timeline on this because I don't want to leave it open-ended. So I have removal of fill shall occur no later than April 15. Grading and seeding shall occur within the spring growing season of 2024. And any necessary reseeding shall occur within the fall growing season of 2024.
Chris, any questions or concerns about that?
I don't have any concerns about that offhand. I think that all sounds pretty standard. I think that Mr. Martins was planning on being in here. I don't know if he is. I don't know if we wanted to see if he had any thoughts, but at the end of the day, I think that's all acceptable to me.
Emily, Patrick, any final questions?
Nothing from me.
Nothing for me either.
So Leah, what are we voting on? Approval of the restoration plan?
Correct. With
All
the
right.
conditions discussed.
So do I have a motion to approve the restoration plan at 116 Creeper Hill Road with the conditions as discussed?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the restoration plan for 116 Cooper Hill Road and with the discussion with the conditions as
Conditions.
discussed is the word.
Second,
All right, roll call vote. Patrick,
Yes.
Emily,
yes.
I am also a yes. Motion carries. All right, good luck. Thanks, Chris.
A lot, folks. We'll be in touch.
Okay, where are we? Fisherville Pond.
Yep.
Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Grafton Commission is holding a public hearing Tuesday, February 20th, 7/5/24 via Zoom to act upon a notice of intent and application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the replacement of overhead transmission line structures between Pleasant Street and Providence Road. So who from the applicant is here to present the project?
I'm here. I'm Olivia Shaw.
All right. Go for
Okay.
it.
So I'm an environmental scientist with TRC here to represent National Grid. And as you just mentioned, the project is within the existing transmission line right-of-way between Pleasant Street and Providence Road. It is where the transmission lines cross over Fisherville Pond. And the project is going to take place entirely within the existing right-of-way footprint. So we're going to have no new clearing. I know there was a butter who had a question about that, but we're not moving the lines. No additional right-of-way area will be created. And the original purpose for the project is to raise the power line clearance over Fisherville Pond, and that's just to meet current water body crossing standards. And there's sort of the dual purpose of moving 2 of the structures that are currently located in bordering vegetated wetland out of the wetland. And just a note on this project, it would typically be considered under the maintenance exemption, but because we're moving structures over 100 feet and raising the height of them, we went with the NOI filing route. So to give you some background on the existing structures that are there, so there are 6 structures that are going to be replaced. Jen, you can scroll to the photo log if you have that, but it's okay if you don't. They're steel lattice structures, and the plan for removal for those is to excavate them to 18 inches below grade. And for each structure, there are going to be 2 areas, basically 2 feet per structure, a 3 foot by 3 foot excavation area. And then these areas, after the structures are removed, will be backfilled with soil from the site. They'll be seeded with a native plant mix, mulched with straw, and monitored for revegetation. And then the new structures that are getting put in, it's going to be a 1-to-1 replacement in terms of number of structures. So 6 new structures going in. These will be called H-frame structures. So they'll have 2 poles per structure. And the foundations for these, there will be 2 per structure, either 4 feet or 7 feet in diameter, depending on the structure type. And we considered a couple alternatives for this project. So one of them is obviously the no action alternative, and this would not raise the clearance. But we also considered replacing the structures in place. So putting the new structures exactly in the same location as the existing structures. Although this was cheaper, it would have had more impact to wetland, as we would have been putting 2 new structures in wetland. So that brings us to the preferred alternative that we chose to go with, which is moving the structures away from the resource areas to the extent feasible. And although this adds some impact to buffer zone, it will take out structures located in wetland. And in terms of temporary impacts, there will be impacts from both matting and from the structure removal, but these will all be restored after the project. So there will be about 76,000 square feet of matting in bordering vegetated wetland. And then there is a small ephemeral stream on site that will have some matting in it. So that's where the 705 square feet of matting inland underwater comes in, and 32 linear feet of matting along bank. And all of that will be restored when the project is complete. And in terms of permanent impacts, we have new structures going into bordering land subject to flooding and to buffer zone. So we'll have 334 square feet of impact to bordering land subject to flooding, but no net impact on the flood storage volume. So very little above ground volume. It's mostly going to be underground foundation structures. And from the new structures, we'll have 298 square feet of buffer zone permanent impact from those new structures. And in terms of the structures that we're removing from wetland, we'll have a net improvement of about 36 square feet of bordering vegetated wetland from those 2 structures that are coming out. And all of the permanent impacts from the new structures going in will be mostly offset by the removal of the existing structures. And just to talk a little bit about the best management practices. So we'll be going with the typical National Grid best management practices. Those are in Appendix E of the NOI filing. But I just wanted to highlight some project specific BMPs that we're going to be using. So because there is a lot of floodplain on site, we're going to have all the construction matting that's in the floodplain. It will be anchored. We're also going to have all the topsoil that's from the structure excavations that will be stored in one designated area. Jan, could you scroll to sheet 3 of the plans, please? Thank you. So that's that red or pink hatched area there. And this is out of resource areas, and it will be completely surrounded by erosion controls when it's being stored there. And then the soil that is excavated from the new structures will be used to backfill the old structures that are getting removed. And that will be seeded and mulched with straw and monitored until it revegetates. And any leftover soil at the end of the project will be spread along upland areas of the site in accordance with National Grid's best management practice. And this as well will be seeded and strawed and monitored as necessary to make sure that it revegetates properly. And during construction, we will be doing weekly inspections. So TRC, my company, will be conducting those inspections. And those will be done by a wetland scientist. And then after construction, we'll be doing quarterly inspections until every single area has reached 75% vegetation cover. And we will use native seed mixes. And then another note that Jan mentioned in my email with her, we'll be sure to use straw instead of hay to avoid any seeding from those species. And then I just wanted to bring up one more thing about the wellhead protection zone that was brought up by the Grafton Water District. So again, there are some typical National Grid BMPs that are meant to be used in those protection zones. And just to highlight some of those, we will be sure to do no refueling or overnight storage of vehicles, machinery, equipment in those wellhead protection zones. And spill control supplies will be available on every vehicle. And then any spills, including really small ones, will be immediately reported to DEP and to the Grafton Water District. And for the duration of construction and after, the site will be open for inspection by either the Conservation Commission or the Grafton Water District at any time. So with that, I am happy to take any questions.
We'll go around the commissioners. Emily, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Patrick,
You might have mentioned this, for the structures coming out, is there restoration plan for those areas?
Yeah, so we're going to be refilling to the same grade that it was before, and then seeding, mulching with straw, and then monitoring until it revegetates.
I don't think I have any other questions at the moment.
so for the seeding, if you're in so for the temporary wetland impacts, is that going to be seeded as well, along with the restoration?
So in general, where there's matting, the vegetation usually doesn't completely die. So we don't generally reseed if the vegetation isn't dead, but we will stabilize it with straw. And then in general, seed is applied if the vegetation doesn't seem to be bouncing back on its own.
Okay, so when you're looking at 75% cover, are you looking at just general cover or 75% of whatever seed mix you applied?
General cover.
Okay, so you're not gonna do any seeding within the wetland areas unless it looks like the vegetation's not coming back. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
And then the upland seeding, is that a native mix or just fescue?
Native mix.
Erosion control mix? It is a native mix, okay. All right. Leah, do you want to run through your questions and recommendations?
Yes, well, we're on the topic of seeding and stuff, just to make sure that, I understand correctly. Specifically the 36 square feet of wetland to be recovered, that area will be seeded, right? Because there's nothing there right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, just making sure, since there's so many different variations. Could you just take us through one more time? I know you had it in there somewhere, your logic about bordering land subject to flooding and like not needing calculations per foot of elevation, just to make sure the commission understands.
Yeah, so the logic behind that was basically the above ground volume that's going to be added from the new structures. So any post that is like in place above the ground that could possibly impede flood flow will be offset by the removal of the existing structures so that there's a net no impact on flood velocity or flood storage in the bordering land subject to flooding area in general, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I had a question about if we go up one sheet to sheet 2, there is a potential vernal pool there. So the purple line is your alternate means of access. And so the potential vernal pool is decently close to that purple line. So I was curious, what determines if you're going the preferred route in yellow or if you're going to need to utilize the alternate in purple?
So I believe that would be up to construction and real estate planning. But for my experience, I've done work for 2 separate projects on this line, and we have not had to use that purple access route so far. I believe it's just because it's slightly outside of the right of way that they need to show it to be completely within the right of way, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I just wanted to know if the commission wanted to put any conditions about like timing of activity if they had to use that route because of the vernal pool. So that's something we can think about
Yeah,
going
definitely.
forward with conditions. The other notes I have are they still need their DEP number and comments, as well as when DEP does reach out with that, and I know who the reviewer is. I do want to ask DEP if the fees that they have paid, if they're inclusive of everything they're doing, or if it needs to be per structure, because the fee schedule wasn't clear on that. But until I know who's reviewing it, I don't know who to ask. And then the only other thing I had was about waivers. They do have a waiver request for work within the no disturb. And then I believe they do need to request a second one, because they are exceeding the threshold of impacts to BVW, the threshold of 5,000. So even though it's temporary, it's for matting, just because they're exceeding that number. I think we need to have that as a request as well, with an additional waiver request fee. But those would be two items the commission could take a vote on if you would like this evening.
Any questions or comments from the public, Jan?
Nothing from the public.
Emily, Patrick, any other questions or thoughts on voting on those measures Leah just mentioned? Or those, what are they, exceptions?
Do we vote now or do we wait until they have their DEP number?
You guys
We
could
would just
vote.
be,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead, Leah. No, go ahead, Leah.
You can
I could
vote
use another
on-
summary.
You can vote on waiver requests now if you'd like. They are items we would be waiving from our bylaws. So it wouldn't be, it's not specific items that DEP will be reviewing. That being said, we can't vote to close the hearing and issue anything tonight, because we have to keep the hearing open until they get their file number. But if you guys just wanted to take votes on the specific waiver requests, you could. If you want to hold those and wait till next time, that's fine too.
I'm fine just holding it until next time, unless Patrick or Emily, you feel differently.
I think holding is fine.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so unless there's more, Olivia, we can't make the recommendation. But if you'd like to continue the hearing, I think that request has to come from you,
Okay, yes, please.
since we're still waiting on stuff. All right, so do I have a motion to continue the hearing to March 12th?
Motion to continue the hearing until March 12th for Fisherville Pond. I think.
And a second? All right,
Second.
roll call vote. Patrick,
Yes.
Emily.
Yes,
All right, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
you also have to be a yes, I think.
Oh, I'm also a yes. The motion carries. All right, thank you, Olivia.
Thanks, everyone.
That was a close one, Emily. Thanks for covering. All right. What's next? 116 Upton Street. Is
Yep.
Steve on? Do I need to read this one in as well?
Yes, please.
Stand by. Let me find the lead sheet. I don't know how Sandy does this.
I think she usually prints something, so that one thing is at
Yeah.
least in front of her in paper
I've got
form.
20 windows open. Okay, pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing via Zoom to act upon a notice of intent for the construction of an apartment complex at 116 Upton Street, Grafton. So Steve, you want to give us an update on where things are at?
Yeah, thank you, Travis, and thanks for having me, members of the board, commission. So where we left really was DEP file number, which we have since received. And there were some comments which we'll get into tonight, which I think are straightforward. And then some of the details of the proposed footbridge that's going to provide connectivity to some existing trails. So what I had provided to your staff was based on comments from your peer reviewer, Art Allen. even though it's a simple footbridge, it does still, toe the line, or it does technically be considered a limited project depending on the performance standards. I don't view it as wetland alteration. We're spanning the BVW and we're spanning the stream within the BVW, the intermittent stream. That being said, I did provide a specific plan sheet 12.1 that shows the constructed footbridge and the table showing how the performance standards are met. And I think the important one in my mind is always the openness ratio. You probably normally see this with roadway crossing wetlands, and you have to provide the right size culvert. But in this situation, it's a footbridge, timber footbridge spanning a BVW, and more importantly, the stream within the BVW. So we do provide those calculations. Fortunately, the stream is deep enough, and we have the volume under the footbridge where we exceed the required openness ratio by a pretty large margin. The revision we made to this plan is, instead of having the footbridge just kind of like tie in on both sides right at the BVW, we picked it up and went past the BVW. So there's no question that there's no proposed BVW alterations. What I also did provide, and Leah, I guess she corrected me, that I provided a revised Form 3, which indicates this would be a limited project. Leah was indicating to me that because we meet all the performance standards, it's not a limited project, but the commission can make a finding, essentially that we do meet the performance standards and the footbridge is acceptable. The only other things would be the DEP comments, and we can go through those, when you think it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Leah, did you have anything else on the footbridge?
Nope, he covered that. I just had the DEP comments.
While we're on the footbridge subject, Emily or Patrick, any questions on that piece specifically?
Seems straightforward.
No questions.
Yeah, nothing from me. Leah, do you want to go over the DEP comments? Recap where we're at with that?
So we actually haven't talked about them at all because we didn't have them last time. A lot of them did center around BVW and bank performance standards. And so, as you can see from the detail in the lower right of this sheet, and as Steve mentioned, he's completely spanning bank and BVWs, so there are no impacts. So he doesn't need to walk us through all the performance standards for those. He doesn't need to quantify impacts to those because there are none. But they had a couple others that I did want to talk through. One was per the design considerations found in Volume 2, Chapter 2 of the Mass Stormwater Handbook, infiltration basins should be set back at least 50 feet from waters of the Commonwealth. And I guess I'll pause there, and Steve, if you want to speak.
Yeah,
to
that sounds
one.
good. I was going to suggest we just do one at a time. Yep, looks like Jan's going to zoom in on the stormwater basins. And when she does, you'll see that the 50-foot buffer zone, sorry for the phone ringing, the 50-foot buffer zone goes through about 25% of that lowest basin. And they call it a design consideration, not a design requirement. And what that means is that they're concerned, they want you to be conscious of water quality. And I don't think water quality is an issue here because, we exceed the stormwater management standards. We meet the Grafton stormwater management standards for phosphorus removal. We have a hydrodynamic separator in line before the infiltration basin for both of those infiltration basins. So we ended up moving the basin as far away as we physically could, giving all the other constraints. This has been reviewed and signed off by Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering on behalf of the zoning board. So, like I said, more specifically, it's a design consideration, which, like I said, we made every effort, I think we possibly could, considering the constraints, and with the extra treatment we're providing, I don't think it's a valid concern, that we should be worrying about. Any thoughts?
Leah, do we need to respond? Does the applicant need to respond to DEP?
No, it's kind of just incorporated into our process here. So we can like turn that into a finding, in the permit.
Steve, is the separator part of a maintenance plan? Like
Yes, it
using a
is.
vac truck every so often?
Yep, an O&M was submitted with the stormwater report, and it is part of the maintenance plan.
Emily, Patrick, any questions on that measure? Or that DEP comment?
No questions?
No, nothing else, I don't think.
We don't have our stormwater guru here, Leah, so I don't have any, I mean, I think that's fine, but unless you have any other concerns or feedback on that.
I don't, as he noted, Jeff reviewed the whole thing, through the ZBA. So
Yeah,
having his take on it and he's okay with it. I'm pretty confident in that. I can read the next comment if you'd like.
yeah.
So then DEP said the applicant should provide test pit data in the locations of the proposed infiltration BMPs in order to demonstrate adequate separation from groundwater. For infiltration basins, a mounding analysis should be provided if separation from mean annual groundwater is less than 4 feet.
Thank you, Leah. So I don't know how the reviewer missed the test pit data and the plans, but on sheet 3.2 of the plan set, we have test pit results for the symbols that show on this plan. There's a symbol, test pit symbol in each of these basins. And then on sheet 3.2 is the results. And what the results will reveal is that we had 90 inches to groundwater depth in infiltration. Yeah, right there on the bottom right. You'll see the test pit result, test pit data results. Nope, 3.2, I think, Jan. Just gonna go up a couple of sheets. Oh, I'm sorry, 2.2. I guess they're, yep, my mistake, 2.2. I wonder why you were confused. Okay, so yeah, in the bottom right-hand corner of that sheet is the test pit results. As I started to say, we had 90 inches in the first test pit in the basin. We didn't encounter groundwater or indications of groundwater at, let's see, we were 120 inches, so 10 feet in the upper basin's test pit. So 90 inches is clearly more than 48 inches that would require a groundwater mounding analysis, and therefore one was not prepared or necessary. And again, reviewed by Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering. So sometimes the reviewers miss information when it's spread across a couple of sheets. We like to put test pit data on existing conditions plans. It doesn't just clutter up the plans that have other information on them.
Emily or Patrick, any questions on that comment?
Nothing from my end.
Nope.
Leah, any other questions or concerns from your point of view?
Not on that, nope.
All right. What was the next DEP comment?
That was actually it. All the rest pertain to, talking about bank and BVW, which they're avoiding impacting. So unless,
Okay,
Steve, unless you want to talk through those.
No, thanks.
Steve, do you have approval from ZBA?
Yes, we do. They closed the public hearing a couple of weeks ago, and they're in their 40-day time period, which they have to issue their actual approval document. So yeah, they've closed the hearing. So we
So, Leah, well, actually, Jan, there's no comments or questions from the public, right?
No, nothing from the public.
Leah, do you want to go through your recommended conditions?
Sure. So I do have a couple of findings. One would be per Ecotech's review that was performed for the ZBA and the subsequently updated delineation. The commission is in agreement with the delineation shown on these plans. A second one is as a 40B, the wetlands and stormwater bylaw permitting is completed through the ZBA. We can add another one. That the applicant has demonstrated that the footbridge meets stream crossing standards, thus is not seeking limited project status. And then for special conditions, I have the wetland flags shall be refreshed in the field prior to commencement of work. A revised sheets C6.3 and C12.1 shall be incorporated into the final plan set. The open space, actually, let me pause here. Is it still the plan that the open space will be conveyed to the town? I just want to make sure I word this one correctly.
yes, it is.
Okay, so the open
the-
space, oh, sorry, go ahead.
The open space is for recreation, correct?
Yeah, I think probably more passive recreation because of the
Okay.
trail network. I don't think anyone's looking to build a soccer field or baseball field there.
So I have the open space shall be conveyed to the town prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance. I have that we will require a bond for erosion control, site stabilization, and stormwater management unless it's already covered by one collected by the ZBA. We don't need to double anything.
Which it is. Just like
Okay.
on Pleasant Street, it's covered by the ZBA.
Okay, so I would just ask for a copy of that then.
Sure.
We would like a copy of the SWIP just to have on file. I have that signage stating protected open space shall be installed along the boundary of the open space. Stormwater basins shall not be fully excavated until any temporary use during construction ends. And then this last one I put together from the Graves Engineering letter dated January 9, 2024. The following shall be addressed in the preparation of construction plans, a copy of which shall be provided to the commission. And I have 3 items. One is the post-development drainage map shall be updated per comment 11A. Landscape plans shall be revised once the site layout is finalized per comment number 19. And the top of chamber elevation for both infiltration beds 1 and 2 on sheet C7.5 shall be corrected per comment 32. And I believe that covers it unless the commission has anything you'd like to add.
Emily, any other conditions or questions about the conditions?
Nope.
Patrick?
Nope, nothing else from my end.
And Leah, you don't need anything on the footbridge? Because it's all part of the plans.
What do you mean exactly?
I don't know, like, I mean, as long as it's built to plan, then it won't impact any of the border vegetation.
Right, yeah, I mean, we can call out more specifics if you would like, but that sheet, I think that one's C12.1
Yeah. so
is
then
the
we're
one that I
covered.
listed as something that will be incorporated into the final plan set, and then we reference the whole set as
Okay.
what we're approving.
All right. Steve, any questions or concerns on any of those conditions?
No, I'm in concurrence with everything Leah read and no objections on our end. We're happy with everything.
All right. If nothing else from the commissioners and nothing from the public, So since we're not voting on, this is exempt from the bylaw, correct?
Yeah,
So are we
so
just voting? Go ahead.
you would be voting to close the
up.
hearing and issue an order of conditions.
All right, do I have a motion to close the hearing for 116 Upton and approve the special conditions as described by the agent?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
have a motion and a second. Patrick, roll call vote.
Yes.
Emily,
yes.
I am also a yes. Motion carries. All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Steve.
much.
Good luck.
Yep. Thank you very much. Talk soon.
I think you need to be chair every time. That was record.
Did we do
record
it? That was it?
timing.
Efficient.
Blacked out.
Just
All right.
everybody's favorite motion is left.
Yeah, one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All right, vote. Patrick,
Yes.
Emily,
yes.
I am also a yes. Thanks, everybody.